the next topic is currying. Hmm. For people that like food like me, like food a lot, FFO. Once you hear currying, you're like, is that not curry? So let me just delete this. So the next topic we want to talk about is currying. So I'm going to write that out. Like curry, like this. Then ing, continuous present tense, or what they call it in English. So currying. So that is what we are going to talk about next. Then the question is, what is currying? Well, currying is the process of converting a function that takes multiple arguments into a function that takes them one at a time. So currying doesn't call a function; it just transforms the function. Currying is a process, in functional programming, in which we can transform a function with multiple arguments into a sequence of nesting functions. So it returns a new function that expects the next argument in line. So let's see what I mean by that, because these jargons are just throwing at us. So let's say we have a function here, and this function we are going to call it, let's call it multiply. So I want to write a function that multiplies maybe some numbers. So let's call it multiply. And this function is going to accept two parameters, a and b, and is going to multiply a and b, then return them back to me. So I know we know how to write this in old ways. So if I want to write this in old JavaScript, I just want to show us, but we won't be using the old ways. So if I want to write this in old JavaScript, I can just do function multiply, then takes two parameters, a and b, then return a multiplied by b. So actually, this is what we did yesterday. Or another way to do this is you can use our old ways. You can also do let multiply equals, just write your function. If you remember, we have function declaration and function expressions. So we can do this. Then inside there, we'll return a and b. So these are the old ways of writing functions. But then we don't want to live in the past. We want to live in the future. So we are not using this again. So you can see that, see what I wrote. I just wrote this. This is 3 lines of code. And using the new ways, just 1 line, and everybody is cool. How beautiful that is. So I'm just going to delete this because we are not using the old ways. Or probably, instead of deleting it, in case we have some people that would want to match that. So I can just have it here, then comment it out. So in case you want to look at that, while we are writing our code. So we are talking about currying. So we have this simple function, and this function, what it does is it receives 2 parameters, then it returns the multiplication of the 2 parameters. So currying means we want to change this function to only accept 1 parameter at a time. So that means we can do, let's convert this to a curried function. So we can do curried multiply. Why? You don't know how to spell multiply? Multiply equals receives a, which is a function that returns b, and b is also a function that returns multiplication of both. Oh boy, read one. What is this? So what do we just do? Again, this looks very confusing, but think of these arrows as functions. So actually, whenever you see these arrows in JavaScript programming, then it means like this is a function, and whatever we have there are the parameters. This is the name of the function, and this is what we are returning. And you can also return this explicitly. How do we do that? By writing the return keyword, then I can do this. It's still the same thing, but then I just want to have everything on the same line. So if you have everything on the same line, you don't have to add the keyword return. So back to our curried function. Actually, this looks, very confusing. But then, can I write this in old ways? Probably this will make us to understand what is actually happening. So if I want to write this the old way, we can do a. So this function receives parameter a, and inside a, I'm returning another function. Which receives parameter b, and inside b, I am returning a multiplied by b. So this is what we have. So I'm just writing this out, like just we see how we do this in the old ways. So that is this, and I'm just going to like copy this to the top, so just in case we have to have it as a reference. No, I don't want to do this. So we can have this and comment it out, just in case you want to check later, just to compare and contrast. So with what we have now. So imagine, look at this. I have these multiple lines of code, and I have it on a single line here. So arrow functions makes life easier and makes life beautiful and makes your code easier to read. Anybody can just come here and they can read my code and they will understand, instead of them glancing through many lines of code and So back to our currying. If I do curried multiply 3, so if I do this, well, I think the best thing for us is let's just copy this, and let's copy this, and let's go back into the console. Let me play this. So inside my console, let's run it. So I'm going to paste. You see, I got something back. So this is saying that let me go back to the code. So this is saying that a, which is this, is 3. So what we have there is just like, this is 3. And we know that when we multiply, when we do the curry multiply, a is 3. So we have a here to be 3. So because this is a function that has another function inside of it, so a function inside of a function, and this one just returns 3 multiplied by b back. So that means this function is returning whatever we have here back. So it returns a function back. So in another words, we have curried multiply, which says 3, and then another bracket. So we can just do curried multiply. Let's say we want to multiply 3 by 4. So we can have another bracket here, which is 4. So if I do this now, I got 12. So if we look at this curried multiply function and compare it with this first function we have here, we see exactly what we did. It's almost the same thing. So we created a variable which is curried multiply that accepts a parameter. So it's a function that accepts a. Let me just return this back. So in this case, a is 3. And once you call that function, once you run it, it returns another function that accepts b. And that function is going to multiply a by b. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying curry multiply, a is 3 and b is 4. Now multiply 3 by 4 and return whatever result you have back to me. So as you can see, currying is the process of converting a function that takes multiple arguments into a function that takes them one after the other, one at a time. So now, why do we even have to do this? Because that's the question, like, seriously, we have this already, then why are we creating more problems for ourselves? Why? Because this is more extensible. So I can do something like this. I can do something like const. So I already have my current multiply, so I can do multiply by 7. So I want to do multiply by 7, then equals to current multiply. So I don't need this. Let me return them back to the way they are without those arguments. So I can do current multiply 5. So anytime I want to multiply, by 7, I could just say, let me just copy this code. So if I copy this code, always remember to have your semicolon. So if I copy this code into console, let's go back to the console, let's refresh. Okay, sorry for those gibberish. So yeah, I could just say multiply by 5. Then if I do multiply 7, I got this. Oh, sorry, there's a mistake there. Current multiply by 7. This is what I actually wanted to do. So if I copy this code again and I go back into my console, let me clear these errors off. So I can just do something like multiply by 7. So if I enter this and I do multiply by 7 and I had probably 3 times 7, 21. You see that? So this is extensive. I can do, I can do 7 times 7, which is 49. So I can do 7 times 100, which gives me 700. I can do multiply by 7 times blah, 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 blah. I have this. But compare it with this, whereby I constantly have to, like, be imputing the two things. Like, okay, I have multiply, then I can do multiply, this is not extensible. So I just have to do 5 and 6, all those things. So curried, makes our code extensible. So now I can do whatever operation I want with multiply by 7. Or I can even go like, okay, I want to have a program, and that program should multiply whatever you give it by, let's say 7, 8, 9. And I put 7, 8, 9 here. So I can, so if I want to multiply 7, 8, 9 by something else, I can just do multiply by 7, 8, 9. I multiply it by what? 56. And I'm going to get my answer. So I have this function that was created that always multiply any argument you give to it by, by 7. Any argument you give to it is going to multiply it by 7, which is very, very cool. So another example I can show us is, so presently we have 2 parameters being passed in. So let's do another one, which is, let's say 3 parameters. So I'm just going to comment this out. So I can say here, like, let me use the old way. So multiply, I can do multiply, then which takes 3 parameters, A, B, C, and returns A multiplied by B multiplied by C, and returns this back. So if I want to, like, get the result of this, like, I want to use this to multiply 3 numbers. So what I'm going to do is I will do multiply, then add the 3 numbers. Let's say I want to multiply 1 by 2 by 3. Then let's see, at least this should give me 6. So if I copy this and I go into my console, oops, I need to refresh. I'll probably, let me name this multiply 3 numbers so that I don't have to be refreshing the, what's it called, the window. So if I copy this now and I go back and I refresh it and I do, so I got 6 back. So in ES6, you can actually write this in EX6. So instead of writing this function like this, what we do is you can do const multiply by 3 number, multiply 3 number. It takes 3 arguments. It takes, sorry, the first function, which is A, which returns the second function, that returns the third function, and the third function returns A multiplied by B multiplied by C. So this is the old way. I'm deleting this, and I have this. This is the new way. So it's going to return the same thing. And what is this? Okay, let me just, sorry, that's not the old way. So this is just a simple way. And the old way of doing the current multiply function is multiply by 3. Then we have takes A, then return another function, which takes B function, which takes B, which returns another function, function that receives C, and this returns what? Sorry, this returns A multiplied by B multiplied by C. So this is the same thing with what we have with the current, what's it called? So this that we have here is the same thing as this that we have on a single line of code. So this function is the same thing as this. So imagine instead of writing blah 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 many lines of code, I just have everything on a single line. So that is the beauty of, you know, our arrow function ES6. So if I copy this, I just have to write this out so that you can see, but then I don't need it. So if I copy this now and I paste it here, I should get 6 back, which is what, okay, let me refresh. Okay. Oh, sorry. So if I refresh this and I do multiply, oh, sorry, 1 by 2, 3, I got 6 back. So to get the result of the multiplication of the 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3, the numbers are passed. The numbers are passed, you know, one after the other. Each number prefilling the next function in line for evocation. So we could separate this multiply 1, 2, 3 of a thing. Oops. So this is actually what I want to do. So we could separate this multiply and let's see what that means and what is actually happening. So let's say we have const mult1 equals this function, which is mult3. Then we pass it 1. Then here we have the second mult2, which equals mult1. Then we pass it 2. Then we have the third. Let's say this is the result that we are trying to get, which equals mult2, and we pass it what? We pass it the third number, which is the third value, which is 3. And let's console the log result and let's see what we have. So if we console the log the result, so this is actually what is happening. So if we do it this way, And let me copy this out. If I go back into my browser, refresh this, and I paste this, I got 6 back. So let's take a look at it one after the other. You know, so what is actually happening? We passed one. We passed one to this function, multiply 3 number function. So we pass one to it. It returns, you know, the function. It's going to return. Okay, let me just. So I'm going to use this as an example for now, so that we understand what is actually going on. So can I comment this out? Let me just leave it. We don't need this. So what is actually happening is we passed one value of 1 to this function, and we save it inside mult1. So once we pass this function, it's going to return this function back. So mult1 is going to return this function back. So inside that function, you know, now mult1 holds this function that we have here, which takes an argument of b. So we called mult1 function, then pass it, you know, 2. So definitely b equals 2. So now mult1 will return the third function, which is return c. This function is going to return this. So, and we know that inside there we say a multiplied by b multiplied by c. So that's going to be 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3. So it's return whatever value that we get here back up, and return it back to whatever where we want to, whatever variable we are saving it in, or probably we are actually returning it back to the console or into our program. So in essence, mult2 would be like mult2 would be like something like it receives C, then it returns A multiplied by B multiplied by C back. So this is what mult2 is doing. So when mult2 is called with 3 as the third parameter or the last parameter, we have const results equals this. Okay, we have it already. So const result equals this. So it does the calculation with the previously passed in parameters, like A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals 3. So that is what currying is all about. Don't worry, I know it's too much, but then if you rewatch the video, you understand what is happening. And another thing is, you might not even be using this in your program, but you need to really, really understand what currying is. Probably you are getting, you are being asked in an interview, or maybe you are reading someone else's code and they are just trying to form all those, guru, and they are using currying. You'll be like, I know what you are doing now. I can also do it. So we are going to get into one more thing, and then I promise you, I'll make sure your head stop hurting, because presently you're like, this thing is getting too much. So the next thing we are going to talk about, okay, let me just cut this video.